Thanks for staying up later as we welcome Bill Carter of the New York Times, whose book is The Late Shift, Letterman, Leno, and the Network Battle for the Night. And this has gotten enough publicity that even those who haven't read the book know that, in general, it's about all the maneuvering that's gone on in the aftermath of Johnny Carson's retirement and David Letterman hoping to succeed him and eventually winding up at CBS. Let me start with this question. Was there any way that NBC could have held it together, could have in some configuration kept both Letterman and Leno?
I don't think so in the final analysis. I think there was an effort to make that move at the very end, and I don't see how it would have worked out. They would have had to make Jay some sort of lame duck with giving the show to Dave, and I frankly thought that idea was not very smart.
But that's at the end. What if at the beginning, just suggesting this scenario, what if at the beginning they had said, David Letterman, in effect, has been in the on-deck circle for 10 years. He's done a great avant-garde show, but now the audience has gotten 10 years older with him. This isn't a 12:30 show anymore. It can be an 11:30 show, but we think so much of Jay Leno, who's been so great pinch hitting for Johnny Carson, we're going to give him his own show at 12:30. If it had come down that way, not after it got all entangled a year later, could that have worked?
I don't think so, because Jay had an offer from CBS to go to 11:30, and NBC had to counter that by promising Jay the 11:30 show. So I don't think Jay was going to take the 12:30 show at that point, even though, by logic, you would say, well, he deserves to be on the network, but let him fill the secondary spot for a while and see what he can do. I think that would have made more sense. But I think the NBC executives were convinced that Dave was more of an act that played at 12:30, and that Jay had succeeded at 11:30 as a substitute host and was more appropriate at 11:30, and the lineup worked better Leno to Letterman.
So it wasn't simply a case of NBC executives making an objective judgment and saying Leno is better than Letterman, but believing that since Letterman hadn't campaigned for it, or maybe just taking for granted that he wouldn't be aggressive enough to act if his feelings were hurt, they took for granted they could keep him in the stable, and this was the best way to have them both.
They did take that for granted, and they had him under contract. So they thought, we have a period of time, and if we give the show to Jay and he doesn't work out, well, we still have Dave. And so we can play it that way. But if we don't give the show to Jay, he'll go to CBS. And this is before Johnny had left, so they thought he'll go against Johnny. And they were concerned at that point that Jay would be too strong for Johnny, believe it or not.
How critical are you of NBC executives for the way this thing turned out? Or were they simply caught in the flow of events and there was no really 100% right way to go, and now it's just easy to take shots at them?
I think it's more the latter. I do think they were caught up in a difficult situation. But I blame them for one thing. I don't think they appreciated Letterman and his ability the way they probably should have. The guy was there for 10 years. They could watch him every night. They could see what he could do. And yet there was a feeling somehow that he wouldn't translate to 11:30, which now if you watch him, you find kind of unfathomable. I mean, I said in the book, it's like a guy who's been in the minor leagues, and he's hit 400, and you don't bring him up. You keep him in the minor leagues all this time, and you're not going to give him a chance to show what he can do in the big show. And it didn't make sense. It just showed a lack of appreciation for the guy's enormous talent.
I was thinking about something. If General Electric, the vast global consortium which owns NBC, if GE had a sense of humor, they'd send a guy in here right now to fire me.
To what extent did they place too much emphasis on Leno's affability? And there's no reason why Jay should be criticized for that. I mean, he is a genuinely nice guy.
That's absolutely
and he did work at it with NBC executives and with affiliates. But did they place undue weight on that?
I think they did, because I think they realized when Johnny had the show, he was not going to show up at every affiliate's meeting, and he was not going to do every favor for them. And so that was always something of a problem. And Dave was similarly was not that kind of guy who was going to jump in and perform at the convention. And Jay would do everything, do anything and everything for them, and that was appealing on some level. And also, with Jay, they got ownership of the show back, which I think was another factor for NBC. Johnny had owned the show, and in the future, thinking of all the things that are happening in television, ownership is a major factor. Put Jay in, they got an ownership deal for the show.
One of the things you make clear, though, in the book is that while David might not have been as cordial toward management types as Leno, the idea that he's 100% a maverick is wrong. Right. This is a guy with deep respect for television history and for broadcasting.
Exactly.
Not just comedy, but for broadcasting. So He revered the Tonight Show and what it meant and respected that.
It was the dream of his life to host the Tonight Show, which I did not realize before I did the book. I knew he wanted the job. I didn't know he had dreamed of it as a boy. I didn't know when he was a boy he built a microphone as his first toy with a Tinker Toy set. It was something really deep in him. And his advantage was that he was a broadcaster. That's why he was so effective in television. Not that he was a comic. I mean, I think if you look at the two guys, Jay and Dave, you have to say Jay's the comic. Jay's the superior comedian as a stand-up. But Dave has the edge in broadcasting, and he did have enormous respect for the traditions of broadcasting, and he loved working at NBC in this building. It was part of history for him, and it excited him.
Why didn't Dave lobby? Just the natural reticence of his personality? Respect for Carson? What?
Both of those things, and also not fear of Johnny, but a certain sense that you don't push Johnny, because, you know, it had been tried in the past, and Johnny, if he felt someone was invading his turf, could make it very difficult for them. Dave was aware of that, but he idolized Johnny. He was never going to push Johnny. It was inappropriate, it was unseemly, and Dave has a sense of etiquette, a real sense of professional etiquette. He's a real professional guy, and he felt that was completely wrong. He had a strange approach, actually, at one point in time, from Johnny's the lawyer, who came to him and actually proposed that Dave sign up to become the host of The Tonight Show, and it would remain under Carson Productions. And Dave thought, this sounds really weird to me, and I don't know if Johnny knows about this, and he stayed way back away from it, and in fact, Johnny didn't know about it. And it was sort of like a palace coup being staged by these guys, and Dave realized, I don't want to get involved in this, I don't want to get on the wrong side of Johnny.
Johnny Carson may have cast the final vote, in a way, for David Letterman, right?
Well, I really think he did. I think he had a crucial last-minute vote. What was happening was NBC, at the last minute, did make an offer to David Letterman and did offer him The Tonight Show. It was kind of a half-baked offer because they were asking him to take the show 18 months after they offered it to him, because that's when Jay's contract was to run out. They were going to make Jay a lame duck for 18 months. And Dave, of all the people around him, Dave was the only one who thought, well, okay, good offer. I want The Tonight Show, because it had been the dream of his life, and he was seduced into the idea that it was the only thing that would make him happy. And so he told people, I'm going to take this offer. And Michael Ovitz, his agent, and his producers are saying to him, you can't take this. You know, it's just not a good offer. And besides that, if Jay winds up doing well in the next 18 months, they're going to figure out a way to get out of this. And so, you know, CBS is going to give you the job right now for more money, and they'll make you the signature star of the network, and they haven't insulted you, and they went on. And Dave is saying, no, you don't understand. I can't say no. This is The Tonight Show. I can't say no. And Peter LaSalle, his executive producer and really the closest guy to him, at that point contacted Johnny Carson and said, Johnny, would you talk to Dave? And Johnny was very hesitant, but he said, if Dave wants to call me, I'll speak to him. And so finally, in his great indecision, Dave decided, all right, I'll call Johnny and see what he says. And he called Johnny, and Johnny said, I got to think about it. And he called him back, and he said, all right, Dave, I think you got to do what's best for your career. And Dave said, you know, I can't decide that. What would you do, Johnny? If you were in my position, what would you do? And Johnny said, if I'd been treated the way you've been treated, I'd walk. I'd go out the door. And Dave, who was so emotional at that point, could hardly remember exactly what Johnny said, except he came away from it realizing, even Johnny thinks I should go to CBS. I guess I have to go to CBS. And it was, in fact, that last crucial vote for Dave, and why he decided he would not take that offer from NBC.
What do you think would have happened if Leno had gone to CBS? What would the scenario have been?
All right, so Leno would go to CBS when Johnny was still on the air. I think he would have come on the air and had a decent reception, better than Pat Sajak. I don't think he would have taken Johnny. I think Johnny would have gone the course, played the course out, and gone through his 30 years.
So he would have gone to October of '92.
October of '92. Then Dave, by a natural progression, would have gotten the job. And I think the ratings would be somewhat similar to what they are now. I think Dave would not be quite as big, because I think going to CBS kind of relaunched Dave a little bit. And gave him
furthered the maverick status. And
exactly. It gave him even more of an edge and more of an excitement. And I think you might see Dave not quite as effective in Burbank as he is in New York, because Dave would have gone to Burbank and done the show in Burbank. But I think, relatively speaking, if you looked at it, you'd say Dave has an edge over Jay, and he would always have the edge that he has, which is this broadcasting edge. I think Jay, on the other hand, would have, if he had the same rating, and he'd have a similar rating, I think, at CBS, would be looked on as a godsend to CBS.
Exactly.
He would be the savior of late night for CBS, and he would be revered. And it's sort of a tragedy for Jay that he's got a position where he's doing well and yet looks like a loser, where with the same numbers he would look like a champion for CBS.
Does he regret he didn't go to CBS?
He says he does. He says he now thinks that if the scenario were that way, he recognizes how positive it would be for him, and he thinks maybe it would have been better for him to go to CBS.
People can take this any way they want. They can doubt where I'm coming from on this. I consider both Leno and Letterman to be friends. I really think that Jay gets a bad rap in this situation. Letterman is who he is. He doesn't just do a good show, he does an historic show.
Correct.
All right, there's something about it that no one else can touch.
Mm-hmm.
But Leno's show has gotten consistently better as he's found his way. And if it were not for David Letterman himself and for the circumstances of how this thing spun out, nobody would say there's anything wrong with Jay Leno.
I absolutely agree with you. And I think it's a recognition that a lot of people are now coming to, at least in the industry. I do think Jay needs to work a little bit more on his interviewing and things like that in the show, but he's worked on his comedy and it's better, and he's no fear of hard work. And that guy will work night and day on his show. I think the rap will be hard for him to overcome, though, because he's got the franchise. He's got the Tonight Show, the traditional franchise, and to not be the leader is, that's historic in itself.
Yeah, but if he'd come, like you say, from another direction, the spin on it would be entirely different.
Totally different.
Your credit line has nothing to do with your value as a person, okay? Sure, Gold MasterCard has a credit line of at least $5,000, but that doesn't make you a better person. Well, I don't know. Maybe it does. I mean, if knowing that no gold card is more accepted on the planet lets you relax and just have fun, then yeah, I suppose it could have some effect. And you can use your Gold MasterCard at cash machines all over the world, so you can get money in drachmas or lire or seashells, so you can tip generously, which any waiter will tell you is the true measure of how good a person you are. Gold MasterCard. It's more than a gold card. It's smart money.
After most meals and snacks, plaque pH can fall to levels where acid starts attacking teeth. These attacks can last up to 2 hours, increasing the risk of damage to your tooth enamel. That's when chewing extra sugar-free gum can help. When you chew for 20 minutes, the chewing action produces and distributes more of your mouth's natural defense, saliva, which helps neutralize acid within minutes. So in addition to regular dental care, after eating, chew Wrigley's extra sugar-free gum, because chewing helps nature fight the acid attack.
We don't buy athletes.
All the other schools are doing it, Coach.
We owe them this money.
I figure about 30 grand. Like to have it in cash.
Did you cheat?
He bought him, Charlie. I know he bought him. Did you take money?
We owe it to him! Nick Nolte and Shaquille O'Neal. Blue Chips, rated PG-13. Starts Friday, February 18th at theaters everywhere.
No.
Is this all you hear when you want to buy a car?
No.
For the answer you want?
Yes.
Come to Cars Yes. Cars Yes says yes. We have financing even if you've been turned down elsewhere. Yes, we have a huge selection of warranted used cars at our 6 convenient locations. And yes, we'll even do your tax return for free when you use the refund as a down payment. For the answer you want,
Yes.
It's Cars Yes. Call 1-800-CARS-YES for the location nearest you.
And we're back with Bill Carter of the New York Times. The incident that's gotten the most attention from the book is Jay sneaking into a closet in Burbank to listen in on a conference call where NBC executives were debating the merits of Letterman and Leno and the fate of the Tonight Show. And Jay isn't bothered by this revelation. He thinks it's
well, he
kind
told
of
it to
a
me.
cute prank.
Yeah, he thinks it's a cute prank, but he also says, look, I didn't have a manager anymore. I had nobody fighting for me. The momentum had shifted to Dave, and I needed something to protect myself, and I wanted to find out what was going on. Informationally, he thought it was important, and he took notes on it, and he was able to then go to the NBC executives and say, well, I know you think the show isn't good at this and bad at that, and they were like stunned. How did you know this? You know, they didn't know he had snuck in and eavesdropped on this entire meeting. I think there are some NBC executives who were made a little uncomfortable by Jay doing that, because
some of them spoke out in favor of Letterman.
They spoke out in favor of Letterman, but also they felt like, you know, was this right ethically for a guy to listen in on a private meeting like that? But Jay's point is, hey, you know, what were they going to do, fire me? I mean, they're going to fire me anyway. You know, he felt like he needed to do something to protect himself.
Most of the people in this book, even those who made mistakes, are presented as reasonable people, capable people. Now, your book has been generally well received, but the one criticism has been excellent reporting, but not enough sharp-edged analysis. Did you trade some of that for access?
No, I didn't trade anything for access. In fact, no one told me, please be nice to me or anything like that. I decided I'd write the book the way it happened. I'd write a story, and I think it becomes clear whether a person was right or wrong or made the right decisions and wrong decisions. I don't think... I wanted to write it in the voice of a narrative. I didn't want to have my voice interrupting and say, and now watch what NBC did here, folks, because it was really dumb. Because I think if you look at it, you can read it as a story, and you don't have to get caught up in the mistakes or the analytical parts of it. I think it comes clear to you what happened, why it happened, and I don't have to be the guy lecturing on the sidelines saying, and now I'm going to tell you what the significance of all this is. I think it works very well as a story.
As I said, a lot of newspaper and magazine articles have been written about your book. And another anecdote that's always lifted is the one where during the commercial on the Letterman show, and the band plays very, very loud in the studio to the point of even being this close, you couldn't hear me with the band playing that loud. Sometimes you notice Dave leans over and whispers in the guest's ear. And during a moment like that, with Terry Garr, one of his favorite guests, he scribbles on a piece of paper, "I hate myself." Now, are we to take that as some sort of window into Dave's soul, or is that just Dave's sense of humor?
I think Terry certainly took it as a window into Dave's soul, because she'd asked him, well, how you doing, Dave? And Dave is very self-critical. Dave never thinks his show is great. He always thinks it's a little bit shy of his own expectations, and he's tough on himself. Some people think that's why the show is good. He's always pushing, pushing, pushing to make it better. But it's certainly not, she's not the only one who's come away with that take from him, that he's hard on himself. In fact, he says, and he has said many times, that the only real happiness he has is when he's on the air. 1 hour a day is when he's happy. When he's doing the show is really when he's happy. Otherwise, he can be very, very tough on himself.
Does it somehow work to the advantage of a late-night host if he, and I'm not going to say he or she, because except for Joan Rivers, it's always been he, if he has real or perceived personal quirks, so that there is a fascination with him beyond the presentation of the material? You know, Jack Parr was quirky, and people wondered what he was like, and he wore it on his sleeve. And even though Johnny was a private man, he had a public persona that gave rise to speculation. What's he really like? And there were enough stories about him, and marriages, and that kind of stuff, and financial dealings. Same thing with Letterman. Jay comes across as such a nice guy, which may make him the happier guy, but maybe it lessens the fascination.
I think it does, but you know what I think really is that Jay is also fascinating. But you got to get beyond that. I think Jay has his own quirks and oddities about his personality that he doesn't actually bring on the air. I mean, Jay, you know, he's not an emotional guy. He's kind of a withdrawn guy emotionally, and he has, I guess, less of an open personality. You don't really see a lot of depth in him. I think there's stuff churning in Jay that doesn't come out, which if it did, it might actually make him a little more interesting to people.
But you do think it's true, then?
I do. I absolutely think it's true, because I think these shows are so interesting. You get to know this guy on a level you don't really get to know other people. You see him every night. You're in bed often watching him. It's sort of an intimacy. And, you know, when Dave makes little jokes and asides about parts of his life, you realize, well, some of this is true, what he's saying about this. The woman who broke into his house and his speeding tickets and, you know, well, I don't do anything on the weekends. I just sit in. Well, you know, some of that is true about him. And so it becomes sort of extra fascinating.
Yeah, if there's a texture there beyond the joke of the moment or the bit of the moment, I think it really helps.
Absolutely. I think Dave has played with that extremely effectively. He knows how to use it, I think, on the air very, very well.
Back with Bill Carter after this.
I mean, when she gets close, it's no time to get in a sweat.
What guys want is clear.
If I get close and he smells, no way.
What girls want is clear. New Clear Arid Extra Extra Dry. The new antiperspirant so clear, it's invisible.
When we're together, who needs distractions?
Get a little closer with New Clear Arid Extra Extra Dry. Solid and gel.
Yeah, I trust Arid.
1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. Give me a break. Give me a break. Play me out with that kick. Give me a break. Give me a break. Break me on the face and the paper.
Man, when I get a cold, I'm not taking a 4-hour pill like Sudafed. I take Contact.
4-hour pills release their medicine all at once. Time-release Contact gives you microdoses every minute for 12 hours.
It'll take you through the whole day.
Contact helps turn sick days into work days.
You know, I paid more for this car than my parents paid for their first house. Now we're a 2-car family, and growing. That's why I like AIS, the auto insurance specialists. They grow with us. We save money on their multi-car discount. And next year, when our son starts driving, we'll save money on the good student discount.
Call 1-800-772-4AIS. We've been California's auto insurance specialists for almost 25 years.
With AIS, we might even be able to afford a 3rd car.
This weekend on E, a brand new episode of FYE featuring Paul Newman, Nick Nolte, Tim Robbins. This weekend on E, exciting and original 1-hour shows, celebrity fitness, celebrity romance. This weekend on E, a half-hour screening of coming attractions, Jack Nicholson in Wolf, The Getaway. All this weekend on E, Entertainment Television, the entertainment news and information authority.
We're back with the New York Times' Bill Carter, author of The Late Shift, Letterman, Leno, and the network Battle for the Night. How close did ABC come to either tossing Ted Koppel out or bumping Nightline back? That seems crazy now, but apparently Cap City's considered it.
It was considered early in this scenario. There was an approach to Letterman where they said, you know, we're thinking of changing Nightline, because they thought that Ted Koppel, whose contract was coming up, might leave the show. And if Ted left the show, they thought, well, then there's our chance to eliminate Nightline and get an hour-long show in there, because the problem with Nightline is they can't get anything after it. So I don't think they could have pushed it back, because none of their affiliates would carry it then. If they carried Letterman and then Nightline, I don't think they could bring that off. But to get Letterman, they probably would have been able to get their affiliates to go along, and then they'd have an hour of late night, which would be more advantageous. And I do think the Letterman people, given that opportunity, would have picked ABC first. That would have been their first choice, given the strength of the network stations and the fact that their audiences in primetime tend to be younger and hipper and all that.
But with that, Nightline would have gone by the boards, right? It would not have followed as a half-hour program an hour of Letterman.
I don't believe it could have worked there. I don't believe it. So that would have been I think, a tragedy for television, frankly.
Now, obviously, they have only half the pie because it's a half-hour show,
right.
But it's worth noting that Nightline either holds its own with The Tonight Show or Letterman, or if it's the right kind of news week, it wins.
It wins. It really wins a lot against The Tonight Show, actually. It doesn't beat Dave that often. I think it's done it maybe once or twice since Dave's come on for a week. But on given nights, it does. And actually, its audience is up. And Letterman has found this huge new audience. And Leno's audience is only slightly off what it was. So the aggregate for the 3 networks in late night is tremendously up.
What accounts for that? More people watching than watched late night TV 10 years ago.
I think the shows are really good. I mean, you know, it's that thing. If you build it, they'll come. They're coming because the shows are good. And I think you have to say Nightline is doing great shows now. They've sort of adapted the format nicely. And then Dave's doing, you know, the show that people have to see and talk about. And Jay's doing a solid show that his audience really likes. So I think it's really the power of the shows.
What's going to happen in that hour after Letterman on CBS?
Well, I think at this point, I would guess that the first choice is Tom Snyder.
Yeah, there was a story to that effect a couple of days ago in the New York Daily News.
And that was speculation, I think, on Dave Bianculli's part, but I think he's on target. I think David Letterman likes Tom Snyder, admires him as a broadcaster, and thinks that the fit is good because it's a slightly different show.
Again, that goes back to his respect for broadcasting history.
Right. That's why he wanted you, Bob.
Right.
But I mean, it would be appropriate, I think, because it'd be a slightly different show, and it would contrast to what NBC is doing with Conan O'Brien, which is a more comedy-oriented show. That would be more of an interview kind of a show, and I think the Letterman people like that. The question is whether CBS would be comfortable with a host who is generationally older than Dave, and certainly older than Conan. He's generationally older than Conan. And I think they think at 12:30, that is the more youth-oriented time slot, and there's probably a lot more younger viewers available at that hour.
What happens if Conan doesn't make it?
Well, I guess a lot of people are speculating that Greg Kinnear is set up to step in if they decide Conan hasn't done it. But we have to see what he can do. He's going to come on the air. People are going to get a look at him in a format where he's going to have to hold up night after night and see whether he has the appeal. I think he does have a lot of appeal, and he works very good on camera. But my experience in going through this book was that This is a difficult format. It looks easy. A guy walks in and he sits down and he sits behind a desk or whatever and he interviews guests. Seems easy. But it really is demanding, and it exposes your weaknesses. If you can't do certain things, it really turns up. And you've got to really work hard at it. You've got to be devoted to it. And it'll be a test for Kinnear.
This was my cold yesterday. Yuck. And then I saw something about...
Sudafed cold and cough liquid caps.
It's new.
Not even a prescription medicine gives you more complete non-drowsy relief of cold symptoms.
Not even a prescription.
It relieves chest congestion, coughing, fever.
All of which I had. So I had to get some, which I did. Now I'm better, and now I'm out of here.
New Sudafed cold and cough liquid caps. No prescription gives you more complete non-drowsy relief.
It works.
Classic television. Hogan's Heroes.
Green Acres.
Arnold Zip. Who played him? Nobody. He was the pig. Remember Family Affair?
Mr. French.
I loved him. He was attractive.
Pete, Link, Julie. Okay, Ginger or Mary Ann?
Ginger was a bimbo.
Mary Ann. Mary Ann or Jeannie?
Beechwood aged Budweiser.
Jeannie.
Crisp, clean, classic.
Mr. Dancing, Mr. Bang, holy, Mr. Bang, holy, Mr. Bang, holy, Mr. Bang, holy, right, dancing, you do the tango, jiggle, holy, wiggle, holy, order, and the home, holy, mighty and holy,
Introducing Best Friends from MCI, a 40% savings for you and someone you call all the time.
Ever wonder what happens when you write to Sally?
Dear Sally, I was totally unprepared.
Dear Sally,
for the I was very upset how
Dear
the audience
Sally,
treated.
I don't agree with the...
You do send me hundreds of letters every day.
Now we're going to share our best viewer mail with you.
Dear Sally, I am writing to you about Debbie, the woman who gave birth to her baby in the bushes.
You won't believe what's happened to her and everyone else. Next, Sally.
Tomorrow at 3, here on Channel 4.
Bill Carter of the New York Times, the book again, The Late Shift, Letterman, Leno, and the network battle for the night. As you know, we're not here on Fridays, at least not usually. We're back on Monday. We're going to do the show live. People always asked, how can you stay up at 1:30 in the morning? Well, we taped every show until Monday. We wanted to be able to say that we did one of them live, and our guest will be, perhaps, the guy who will follow Letterman on CBS. We'll ask him about it. Tom Snyder will be our guest as we broadcast live at 1:35 Eastern Time on Monday. Thanks very much, Bill.
Great to talk to you, Bob.
Bill Carter of the Times, and our time is up. See you later.
Friday. The Face, a criminal who'll outsmart Viper by becoming Viper.
He's using my face.
Viper on NBC.